This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Here is the agenda for today. We're glad you're here. We also invited the Cybersecurity Committee to join us today because of this topic. And I want to give you a few preliminaries on this. We've been actually working with NIEM over the years. We haven't done anything for some time now, but I want to show you the Resource Center. If we go up here on our NASCIO website, and go up here to the search bar, if you want to see the work we've done with NIEM in the past, and we'll explain what NIEM is, but if I just type in NIEM, this is a list of all the publications we've done in past. We've done webinars, that type of thing. So we've done quite a bit in past, okay? So this is not a new topic for many of us. But it may be new for you. So at this point, I also want to bring up something else, and that is before we get into our discussion on NIEM, I want to also bring up our NASCIO Voices, which is our podcast. And I want to show you how to get to our podcasts. Some of the last few podcasts include interviews with Kelvin Rhodes, Stacy Mill, Tarek Tomes, John McMillan. And if we go over to the website for NASCIO, go to Resource Center. And this button right here, Podcast Library, if you click on that, you will see the whole list of recorded podcasts. And these are a wealth of information. And by the way, the last one here was done with John McMillan. So please go there and see what we have for you in the way of podcasts. And with that, let's go back to our slide deck. And this is again is a reminder where that connection is. But I want to give just a short background on where we think NIEM fits with state government. And that is within our data landscape. If we look across the states, these are some characteristics that we've presented in past that describe some of our challenges. Data stored across multiple systems, data quality issues, data sharing is difficult, security risks, privacy, and looking for insight enabling analytics that requires insight enabling data, okay? Also want to show you on our top 10, data management and analytics has risen to priority number 6 on the strategy list, and it's at 6 on the technology list as well. So we've got we think, a lot of reasonable, logical connections to information exchange, and we're going to discuss how the National Information Exchange Model enables exchanges. Now we're going to get into this in detail. We've got
no.
Hang on a second.
I can't. I'm tied up on a call.
There we go. Hang on one second. I'm going to check on our discussions here. I'm going to be muting some folks just to get control of our sound. So bear with me here. Okay, and I'll do that as we go through this presentation, just to make sure we've got control of the sound. So today we have with us guest presenter Katherine Escobar. Katherine is the Deputy Division Chief for the Joint Chiefs of Staff Data and Services Division. She's responsible for oversight of the 3 branches of the National Information Exchange Model Management Office. business, technical, and strategic communications, as well as the public-facing NIEM business architecture and technical architecture committees. Katherine, thank you for being here today. I'm going to bring this slide deck up to full screen just to make it easier, and I'll move the slides for you, okay?
Oh, most excellent. Thank you so much, Eric. All right, and thank you all for inviting me to the conversation. So today we're going to talk, of course, about NIEM, the National Information Exchange Model. And just a little background real quick. So this is a globally recognized standard for information sharing and exchange. It enables the efficient and effective exchange of data, no matter who owns it or where it comes from. So this effort started back as a national program in 2005 and really emerged over the last 15 years with the leadership of multiple organizations to include DHS, HHS, DOD, NASCIO, and many other really great organizations. So with that said, I'm going to move forward to the next slide. No, yeah, very good. All right. So just to give you a little taste of where states are using NIEM in a really profound way, and this is just a sampling, mind you. We have just pages and pages of examples like this, but of course you will, as you go forward, want to see those. We have them available and in really great story format for who uses NIEM. But some of the ones that are, I guess, more recognized and would probably resonate with you are things like the Amber Alert, which is a nationwide alerting system for child abduction, the Prescription Drug Monitoring Exchange. This is really a profound one because there was a major problem across all 50 states with the abuse of prescription drugs. And since the implementation of this monitoring exchange, it has really enabled pharmacies, doctors, and the medical community to reduce that problem because they're able to share information, who's prescribing what, when, how, those types of things. The federal FBI Incident Reporting National Data Exchange, again, this is an overall all 50 states. Some of the states have implemented a very specific version of this, but overall it's for the FBI reporting. So this gives you, again, just an overall sampling of the types of exchanges that are happening at the states. Next slide, please. So as we're looking at interoperability, we're seeing that there are just a tremendous number of advantages here. When you have interoperability between disparate systems that require highly structured data exchange procedures, you're going to find that there are a multitude of benefits by reducing those barriers that prohibit systems from communicating with one another. Some that we have seen and have documented cases of are better decision making, faster, reduction of manual processing, increased productivity. And what you can see, I've got a little image here that gives you an idea of how disparate systems in a industrial use case would all have to come together for a decision making for a company, a government, an organization, you pick it. I think a lot of these very specific lines of effort, if you will, from different organizations will collide because they'll have their own unique data standard, but when they try to talk across or outside their own unique standard, that's where a program or a framework like NIEM really can facilitate and support. So next slide, please. Yeah, okay. So, you know, there are, no kidding, there are technical barriers that are challenging when it comes to creating interoperability. But one of the things that we also see is there are other challenges that go beyond the technical landscape, and that's policy, legal, business, socio-technical. I've put a few up here that give you an idea. So it's not just a technical problem. Oftentimes, it's a cultural problem as well. So you kind of have to solve both of those in order to be able to achieve the interoperability. So next slide, please. All right. So to solve the problem, we see the problem that goes all the way down to the data level. It's not your only challenge, mind you, when you're creating interoperability, but it's the one that NIEM brings to bear as a solution. And that is when you have a variety of data, a wide range of formats, logical models, timescales, semantics, it is very difficult to reconcile all of that. So NIEM brings to you syntactic and semantic resolution in order to overcome that part of the interoperability challenge. Next slide. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about exactly what is NIEM. So NIEM is an open source, community-driven, government-wide standard based on international and other standards. It enables data exchanges across dissimilar systems. It's recognized across the United States and internationally. So when you look at NIEM and the framework, you use NIEM, what you get with that is a total package. It's not just one piece of the puzzle. You get a NIEM community to work with. So the NIEM community is quite robust, and we'll go into that a little bit more, but that community helps to resolve across business areas what the agreed to terms are going to be and how the business model is going to look. We bring technical framework, the data model, the XML design rules, and the methodologies for creating your information exchanges. And then we also have a support framework, and that's going to be the tools to help develop those exchanges. It's going to be the NIEM Management Office, which we provide help in implementation, technical support, a help desk, online resources, etc. So the entire framework is more than just that one little technical implementation piece. Next slide, please. So as most of you can appreciate, computers, while we like to give them a lot of credit for being very, very smart, until you tell them what to do, they really aren't very smart. They're just a box waiting for somebody to tell it what to do. So if you want data to be understood from system to system, you have to be diligent in making sure that you write the software in a way that makes that information the same for both systems. An example of this might be where one database system could be talking about some, let's say, maritime stuff, and one system will call a piece of data to describe a vessel. Another software might call it a boat, a third a ship, and so on. And so when you're trying to reconcile at that database level, if there's no mapping, if there's no understanding of that from system to system, then being able to collect that information and make decisions becomes very challenging. Next slide. So when we look at NIEM, how does NIEM resolve this? So individually, these systems will have what they are labeled in their database. NIEM brings a common vocabulary. So in this example that you see on the slide, we have 3 different systems that are trying to convey information about a person. One system might use terms like last name and sex and gender. Another system might use surname, nationality, origin of birth. And so again, here you can see if they're trying to share data, and they send the information as it exists in their current system, then the new system that is trying to consume that information will not know where to put that data until you tell it. And NIEM provides that common vocabulary with a mechanism for creating the data exchange. Next slide, please. All right, so the overall use of NIEM enables organizations to move across those boundaries, those business boundaries. So on the left, you see our data model lifecycle, and on the very outer edge, you have the state, local, federal, tribal, industrial, demonstrating that regardless of your business, where you are in the world trying to do data exchanges, NIEM can support you. Then you have the next layer in, which is the specific domains. And when we talk about domains, we are talking about a business focus. So for instance, maritime, mill ops, screening, biometrics, each one of them are managed by volunteer organizations who help to reconcile those vocabularies and come to an agreement. And then in the very middle, you have what we call the core. And I have some more slides that elaborate just slightly on that. But the core is what's going to be common across all of the other layers, as well as the state, local, federal, tribal. On the right, you see what we call a repeatable and reusable process for creating the exchanges. We call this the information exchange package documentation. And this is our process for creating that. And we have great documentation for how to do this. We have training on how to implement this. And we have both online, and if you need instructional led, we can do that. Next slide. Okay, so as promised, a little more elaboration on the model. What you'll see here is you have the NIEM core, which is your consistent data regardless of what domain. So let's go again to that concept of a person. Almost every single domain has that, and they're going to need information like first name, last name, date of birth, etc., and that's going to be common. But where it gets unique and where it becomes elaborated is within the exact domain. And in that domain, so let's say we're talking about the healthcare. You might have a doctor, a patient. You might have a relationship sort of status between the patient and the caregiver, maybe. And so that would be one type. Maybe we're talking about the justice domain, where we're talking about a law official, a policeman, or a suspect, or a victim. So when we talk about within the domain about a person, that's where it gets elaborated with more specificity. Next slide, please. And so here we're just showing again how many domains. Currently we have 15 domains that help to keep the NIEM model consistent, the vocabulary adjudicated across the domains and within the core, and they work very, very well together. Each year we come out with a release. We come out with a major every 3 years and 2 minors in between. And the minors typically are focused on content updates and maybe some minor tweaks or fixes. the major is usually releasing a new component of some sort to the NIEM framework. So for instance, this year, the highlight of the 5.0 release is what we're calling the meta model. And the meta model provides the foundation for us to be able to accommodate multiple languages in a more seamless way. So the history of NIEM was very much tied to XML, and we are moving away from that tight coupling into a more agnostic way of doing business. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of financial return and what we're seeing with systems, whenever a system needs to talk to another system, and in this example, what you're seeing is if you had 15 different systems that would have to communicate with one another, what you have is what's called the N-squared problem. And so every system has to create that communication individually to every other system in order to share the data. And on the right, what we're depicting is if you are using NIEM, you only really have to create, know 2 languages, your own and NIEM, so whatever you've agreed to. So again, going back to the hospital, from hospital to hospital, they can talk HL7 or fire, all day long, but when they need to talk to other organizations, such as the fire department or the corrections or police or ambulances, that's where they would want to be able to cross-collaborate in a different language. And this will reduce significantly the number of specific exchanges that have to be developed and ultimately maintained. Next slide, please. So this gives you an overview of our community of stakeholders. We have executives who are involved at the top level of the organizational chain, helping to bring resources to bear and helping to shape the direction in collaboration with the overall community of users. And this has created such a very powerful organizational construct that more and more organizations are coming to the table. We also have program managers, architects, developers, implementers, and tool providers who are bringing resources to the table mostly on a volunteer basis. So as an open source community, it is very robust, healthy, and is working very well together. Next slide. So if you wanted to look at the org chart, this is the official org chart and how we're laid out. So at the very top, as we talked about the executives, we have the Executive Steering Committee, which is right now chaired by the DoD CIO, Chief Information Office, and headed by an SES, which is a senior executive, and his name is Mr. Spurg. And he helps to provide support and resources and to collect resources for the overall program, because at the end of the day, there is some cost to managing NIEM, and so that is the responsibility of the Executive Steering Committee. The next layer down is the NIEM Program Management Office, and that's where I sit as the Managing Director, and basically I help to orchestrate communications between the next 2 layers down, which is the NTAC, the Technical Architecture Community, and the NBAC, which is the Business Architecture Committee. These are, again, all made up of volunteers who are coming to the table saying, you know what, we're working in our organization, and in order to achieve this goal, we need NIEM to do X. And these committees work very closely together along with the overall user community to make NIEM what it is. Next slide. So I bring to your attention that we consider NIEM an open standard as it lines up to the ANSI open standard criteria. NIEM is open and available for free to the public, and not just for use, but also for contribution. If you're looking at some of the official federal guidance out, such as the NTTAA and the OMB A119, they are high proponents of open standards over proprietary or very specific and uniquely defined standards of development. So NIEM falls in this category and lines up with the criteria. Next slide. I want to bring your attention to the various standards on this page, because what's really interesting is in a lot of cases, people could be already using NIEM and not know it. So all the standards listed here have some relationship with NIEM, whether they have adopted the NIEM data model, maybe they are incorporated in NIEM, maybe they're using NIEM conformant exchanges. In any case, every single one of these standards, if you're using any of these, you may already be using NIEM and not know it. Next slide. So this slide and the next slide just gives you an overall view of the domains, a description of them, and who the point of contact is for coordinating with if you decide to join a domain. So I won't go through every single one, and I believe you will be getting a copy of the slides, so you'll be able to peruse and see if there is a fit that you would like to engage. Next slide. And as promised, this is the second slide that also elaborates on those domains. All right, next slide. So one of the things I want to bring to your attention, and I have 3 slides on this that really identify what we consider as our value proposition. The first is the interoperability. And we provide support in interoperability by providing that common language and vocabulary, reducing the issues of having the same type of data with different names or construct. And we do this in an agnostic way, a non-proprietary, open, scalable, tailorable. It is not specific to be implemented on a particular system or language. NIEM is available to be used in any format or system. Next slide. So reusability is another one of our value propositions. When your organization creates IEPDs, you could do this either from the ground up, from scratch, or you could use an IEPD that maybe another organization that is similar to yours has already developed and tweak it around the edges. Again, having a community that is building IEPDs and sharing them openly really helps to improve the value here with reusability. Additionally, as you develop your IEPDs, as if you recall the few slides back where we had the n² problem, that IEPD is reusable in the sense that as you are communicating with other organizations, it may not be 100% exact, but I guarantee you're going to be able to reuse a lot of it and then, again, tweak it around the edges. So now, instead of developing every single one of those from scratch, now you have that reusability. And it's going to increase the consistency. You're not going to have something different every single time and then have to go back and read the notes every single time you do a system update. You're only going to have to do it once for the main communication thread with NIEM. Next slide, please. And then we'll talk about standardization. So again, with the large community support, there are a great number of practitioners, government, commercial, and private organizations that are all working to make the NIEM framework adaptable to fit the needs of the community. That said, it's not done in a willy-nilly sort of format. It's done in a very structured approach. We have the repeatable process, that IEPD lifecycle, and that really helps to our development parts of our teams to be able to move out and create these exchanges quickly. Next slide, please. So if I was going to sort of wrap up the why NIEM theme, I like this slide in particular because it really, kind of hones in on that. So you've got the collaboration in the whole community. You have the consistency of the vocabulary and the framework and the IEPD lifecycle. You have development support and are able to extend. It's not a rigid sort of solution. You can adopt NIEM, and where items that you don't see a fit, you can extend to meet your specific needs. And there is a support system. Ultimately, if you were selling this to your senior leadership, your return on investment is going to be built by the bottom boxes. So your lower cost of development, your ability to enhance your mission capabilities, your common vocabulary, reduced maintenance cost, etc. And so if I'm bringing it all together in a nice, neat bow, that's what I am presenting here on this slide. Next slide. This is this is a list of the various resources that are available online. One of the things that is really nice about NIEM is you don't have to call us to use it. If you are interested, you can go out and self-train and self-learn and self-implement if you have the motivation to do so. But if you need the help, we're there at the NIEM Management Office to help you. And again, because you're getting a copy of these slides, I wanted to make sure you knew that these resources are available to you. Next slide. All right, so that's all well and good. I've told you why and all the great stuff. NIEM is the solution to all your problems, right? So now we're going to move on to how, which is the roadmap to adoption. So as you get spun up and you're thinking about your challenges, the first thing that we'd like you to do is assess what your current state is. And this is just good program project management, right? This should not be new to anybody. But you look at where you are today. What is your biggest challenges? Where would you like to solve problems? And then how much is that costing you? Will NIEM actually save you money and time? Is it a good way for you? And then develop a roadmap to get there from here. And we have resources to help you in each of those steps in a very methodical way. Next slide. So when you're looking at NIEM and you're thinking through whether or not you'd like to adopt NIEM in some way, the things that you would take into account are the architecture. What does that look like currently? Are you upgrading a system? Are you creating a new system? How will you incorporate NIEM as part of your overall architecture? You'll want to look at the consistency of your information exchanges, and do you need NIEM to add some values on your behalf? This is something that you could get involved with the community and advocate for if you have a different line of business than what NIEM already accommodates. And then you can take advantage of all the other work that the other domains have already done before you. The development and IEPD lifecycle, what is it going to take to do that? How are you going to train your development and implementation staff? You know, what is that going to cost and what is the timeline of that? And then ultimately, what's the value of the reuse of having those IEPDs, either the ones you develop or using ones that are available to you from the community? So just a couple of items that you'd want to take into your calculations. Next step. So sometimes we'll hear an argument that NIEM is hard to implement. And what we've learned is that when we talk to folks, when we talk to developers and we give them the tools that they may or may not have been aware were available to them, then there is a full recognition that pretty much all the developers out there that have, you know, I would say a pretty moderate level of skill in exchange development and API development, they catch on to NIEM really, really quick. And having the tools, having the technical support outreach, having the NIEM Management Office allows the developers to have somebody to reach out to instead of having to do it all on their own. So is it hard to develop? I think if you don't use the resources available, I would say absolutely yes. It is very hard, like anything else. If you're trying to put an IKEA dresser together without the instructions, you just got a lot of pieces. But if you look at the instructions and you make the resources available to you, it becomes a lot simpler. Next slide. So we recommend training as one of the very next steps that you would think about in your action plan. And again, we have different layers of training. We have some at the executive level, some at the program and project level, the architect and the developer level. And we have this all, again, available online. We have a list of providers that have performed training in the past that you could work with. And then we could also, from the NIEM Management Office, provide some of that training. So there are a variety of mechanisms, but training is going to be one of your best avenues for getting up and running really fast. Next slide. So just some final thoughts. Again, the NIEM Management Office is a resource for you. If you take advantage of it, you're getting the whole community to include the NBAC, the help, the management office, the online resources, the training, etc. You know, you should consider looking at, you know, giving us a call, and we can work with your work group for tasking and guidance. So if you present a problem that we don't know how to solve, we can work with you to see if NIEM is a fit. It may not be a fit. We may prove that it's not, because it's not a fit in every case. And I'll tell you, this is one of the areas that is really important, because NIEM is not the 100% solution for everything. An example of that would be an email solution. You know, we all have email solutions, whether it's Yahoo or Microsoft Exchange or whatever. NIEM really isn't a fit there. That's already, you know, pretty universally defined and works really well. But if you have systems that need to talk to one another at the data level, this is where you really want to consider NIEM, and we can help you with that. So give us a call. We are, or email us, or send us a smoke signal, or however you find us, and we will respond. Next slide. This has
Okay,
my
Catherine.
contact information.
Here's the contact information for yourself and the rest of the team there at the Program Management Office. And then we're looking for questions through the chat. I've got one question here, Catherine. I'll go ahead and ask it. Coming from state of Arizona, what is the intersection between NIEM and enterprise integration patterns?
Enterprise integration matters.
Patterns.
Is that what you? Patterns. So again, what we're talking about is at the data level. And if you don't mind, Eric, I have one slide that shows the scope of NIEM.
Sure.
And
where do you want to go?
So it's in the backup slides.
All right. Let's go ahead and
and
bring up the table of contents here.
And
Give me a slide number, Catherine, and I'll open it up.
yep, 49.
49. Okay. Here we go.
So I turned 51 this year, and everybody told me I'd start to need bifocals, and now I'm starting to believe them. Okay, so it took me a minute to see. Apologies. So when what I'll tell you is with regards to enterprise level patterns, or pretty much any of the things that are outside the scopes of the actual data exchange, those are all going to be defined by the architecture and the systems. So what this slide is trying to convey is exactly that. You're going to have your system, its architecture, its design. I'm not sure if you're talking about like the newer kinds of implementations for Internet of Things and doing naming of data objects, or if you're talking about, some other kind of, data modeling solution. But at the end of the day, NIEM is not going to depict any of that. It's really going to be helpful in defining the actual data content and how it should be represented based on your implementation through naming and design rules. So if you're implementing JSON, YAML, XML, binary, pick your flavor that way. And then the vocabulary, so the actual payload of that exchange. But everything else, let's say, we're talking about your cybersecurity. NIEM can accommodate metadata that once the package is delivered, can be abstracted out by your PEPs that will read the rules of that metadata that you describe and then execute on it. Does that help answer the question?
I'm not sure, but I think something else people would be interested in is one of the advantages I think that has been presented about NIEM is reusing information exchanges. How would someone go about learning what exchanges have been modeled and implemented and to see if, in fact, they could reuse it? And I'll go back to the table of contents if you've got slides you'd like to show.
I really don't have any slides on that specifically that I provided, but I can talk you through some of that. So in the past, there has been registries and repositories of IEPDs, and those are still out there. They're a little bit dated, and but the old registry I'm getting tongue-tied here, I apologize. The old registries and repositories are still out there. And so if you found an IEPD that you thought you could dust off and reuse, a couple of things that you'll have at your access. One is what organization developed and implemented it. So you'd have a point of contact available to you, but also you could download the IEPD and if you needed some technical support to kind of unravel what you've got on your hands there, then again, you could call the NIEM Management Office and we could help you with that. Going forward, you should know the NIEM Management Office is currently in the process of developing a new set of tools to create IEPDs end-to-end. Some of the tools we have out there are really, really great. They're on our tools page when you go to NIEM.gov, but there's no comprehensive set of tools that kind of links all of the stages. So you might use one tool for one and one part of the stage and another for the other, but we're in the process of developing that. In addition to that, we are developing new registry repositories. By the end of this year, we look to launch our restricted registry repository. So one of the things we heard from the community is there is a need sometimes to share registry or IEPDs, but they can't just have them out in the open internet. And they need a mechanism to control who would have access of those IEPDs. So we are currently in development of the restricted one, and then the next registry repository we look to implement would be an update and revisement of the existing registry repositories with improved features. So I see you've gone to our NIEM page, and if you click on the tools catalog link, all right, so if you'll scroll down just a bit, you'll see that there are a variety of tools here that support each of the functions of the IEPD lifecycle. And then one of the links is actually to IEPDs. So I believe scroll down just a little more. It'll say something like reuse IEPDs, or I can't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. I'm sorry? Oh, but it's in our, sorry, I've got a great voice over my shoulder. There, IEPD Clearinghouse. And that link takes you to some, you see it's a repository of 357 IEPDs that are available for reuse. Now, all of that said, with an online open community like this, there's no mandate that if you create an IEPD that you have to register it or anything like that. It's all voluntary. But as you can see, our community is very interested in sharing.
Very good.
All
right, here's another question. Is NIEM working to be an industry domain standard to the level of FHIR, which is used for HL7 exchanges? And I think this will be our last question, Catherine, because of the next NASCIO event coming up on State Ramp. So let's address this question as a closing question. So any plans for making NIEM a standard of the same level of as HL7?
So actually, we are exploring an avenue in that direction. Right now, we are looking at what the best avenue is. And for anybody who's ever gone down this path, wow, it is a crazy path. So the first option that we're looking at is possibly standing up NIEM as its own, what's called accredited standards ASD development organization under ANSI directly. We're looking at the advantages, disadvantages, costs, and all of that sort of thing. The second avenue we're looking at is possibly getting sponsored by an existing organization such as FIRE or OASIS or OMG. So as we look through the various options, there are pluses and minuses, of course, and looking at that, but we are definitely, it's one of the goals this year is to identify the path forward and become recognized at that level.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Katherine, for presenting today. This recording will be up on our NASCIO online community, and I anticipate we'll have some future conversations about NIEM and developments. And with that, we will close this call. Thank you all for being here.
All right, thank you.